So with that, this begins our part of our storytelling, which we go into the reflective storytelling. And the beauty of storytelling is there's three different imaginations that are always at play. There's the imagination of the storyteller, and then there's the imagination of each one of you. Because each one of you has a different picture, a different way of seeing. Like, what was the colors of the dragon? What kind of fruit maybe she was giving? What did the path look like up along the burbling creek, or even the village or the temple doors? And that's where the magic of the storytelling comes in, because when we contribute the imagination that was awakened inside of us, we are beginning to flesh out that story. We begin to flesh out the deeper meaning and symbology that is stirring in each of us. We give voice to that. And so with that, I'd like to just open up first with, where did you find yourself in that story, or what imagery really came up for you? And then we'll begin to kind of dissect, unpack the story, and show what are some of the symbolic elements in that story. What do they mean? And how might they reflect in our lives? And since there's no way to raise your hand, just go ahead and unmute yourself and begin to speak, and we'll give you that chance to contribute your voice. Make sure you unmute yourself. Who would like to start?
I'll kick these doors open.
Ah, thank you, Nate, brother.
Although they don't have to be kicked open, because I laid out a story that was, wow, this is, you could write a whole book from this story.
Oh.
Say the name of her again.
Ahimsa Mana, which I'll tell you the meaning of in just a moment.
So, mana already means magic to me, but Ahimsa Mana, there's an old word in Japanese called irimi.
What's it called?
It's you roll the R, but I can't roll the R today because I've got a canker sore. It's spelled I-R-I-M-I.
And how do you say it?
And you would roll the R, because the R is not really pronounced in Japanese the way we pronounce it. It's irimi.
Irimi. Okay.
Yeah. So with the letter M, like Mary. So irimi, in a basic definition, means entering. But when you're a teacher, there's a secret meaning, of course, behind all the words, and that's what you're after, and that's what you send your students after. So the secret of entering. And it was interesting because Irimi showed up in the story right away. How did the demon gods get there? Well, the secret is they got there subtly, because a complacency had set into everybody. The offerings didn't instantly get offered that were overripe and ready to be turned into alcohol. Over time, there was a complacency. Over time, there was an apathy. And in this subtle way, everyone was just carrying out their regular prayers and going through the motions, I would say. And the way she was jolted awake is the same in all the old stories. She leaves the village. She's got to go out into the wild. And among the wizards, what we like to say is an old saying, the gods are born every single day. So she goes to the womb. She goes into nature where the gods are being born again that day.
Yeah.
Boom, and she remembers. And there's a danger in our spiritual practices. It doesn't matter if you're Hindu or if you're Buddhist or you're Choctaw, or you're like me, a mutt wizard. You can get caught up in going through your motions and using your mileage, your air miles, to get things done, and you stop entering correctly. And it's a subtle thing to enter correctly. You got to take a pause. You have to breathe. If you're not breathing when you're entering, your heart's not beating.
Wow.
And you're not going through the door of the heart, which is the secret door that you always have to go into when you're going to invoke the old magic.
Uh-huh.
And then the rest, I'll let everyone else take a part. But I loved how she had to, for the sake of everyone, remember how to enter. And remember to go back to the land, because the land never forgets.
Oh.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
And that's why the dragon is the dragon. He's this old land spirit that lives inside of us, this kundalini.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll sleep until we're out in nature. And it doesn't work to go into nature once a week or once a year. Even if you're in an apartment building, you have to find a way every day to go to nature. And you can even do that, other ways, but I'm bogarting. But anyway, we have to learn to go to the secret place that we're called to go to alone at the point of offering. If you don't go into the secret place before you take an offering, you can't offer the right gift to the gods. You have to go all by yourself, alone, deep, deep, deep inside, at a humbling, soul-crushing place, this place where it's razor sharp, not in an abusive way, but in a way where there's no bullshit. And at that no bullshit moment, that's where the God's being born outside. So if you offer the gods something that is less than the purity of where you're forged in your alone, most honest effort to enter in well, where can I be of service? You can poison even a god.
Oh, brother. As always, brother, I love those rich reflections that you provide, brother. Yeah. That's deep. I love how you mentioned the gods are born every day. Yeah, I really love how you cued in too on the importance of the entrance of our own being, of our own mind coming into the world, making that sacred, aligning our heart to bring in the entrance. Yeah, brother. So much. Thank you. Yeah. Cool. There's a lot to come back to, but I want to give some others some voice here. Yeah. Yeah. So where else did you land in the story? What mythic elements came out for you guys?
I guess I'll go.
Hello, Heather.
I had some identity with the heroine, I guess I'm gonna call her, because I can't pronounce that name. I had some identity with her because she was like the reluctant heroine of the story. And I guess I'm always kind of the reluctant person who I relate to that because I'm the reluctant person who gets pulled into these kind of roles that make me step up and take the lead and do these things. And
Oh.
I've been having a lot of that at work lately.
Mm.
And it's just kind of been awkward feeling, but I've been going through it.
Wow.
So I guess I identify with that a lot. And I guess I like that the dragon didn't die and he started dancing around and stuff. That was a nice twist, that the dragon wasn't slayed.
Oh.
So he was actually helped, and that was a lot of like more about gratitude and sharing that gratitude.
Yeah. Home.
Instead of, I'm going to go slay the dragon, I'm going to share my gratitude with him and get something back, and then that will heal the village and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess I like that she's the reluctant warrior that I've always kind of been.
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
I tend to step into that role a lot.
Yeah. Hmm.
That's what I do. I get put into it and I get put on the spot, and then it's like, okay, let's go.
Yeah. It takes a lot of courage to do that.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. It takes a lot of courage to stand up and be the reluctant one. Yeah. I really love how you also caught on that, the dragon didn't need to be slain.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a common theme right now. I think we need a new narrative. Many of the same narratives just going about slaying and this toxic masculine energy of needing to conquer things. And I'm so glad you caught on to there's a different narrative we can have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that reflection, Heather.
It was pretty nice.
Yeah. Thank you.
I guess I enjoyed the dragon and Heather's background too. It's kind of
right.
helps picture the story. I kind of identify with the dragon and with Ahimsa. I kind of like was walking through my own life in the story of kind of like having that connection with nature and losing that, and kind of buying into the illusion, getting caught in the spell or whatever, and kind of fighting that dragon inside myself, and then making peace with it, and kind of like on the inner journey to kind of heal the outer world. So I think there was something there to that of making peace with the shadow, and then being able to dispel the illusion. So that's kind of how it landed for me.
Oh, yeah, brother. Yeah, you hit that one right on. Yeah, there's that element of the ocean, right? The sea, which is normally that reflection of the shadowy emotional aspect of us. And it's called the Sea of Animus. And animus is that feminine aspect, the inward aspect of ourselves, where there's a lot of the emotional content. And so I'm really glad how you caught up onto that, where we had to venture inward into the shadows where the dragon was, and tend to it. Yeah.
And the reluctance to go there, like I was feeling like, she really didn't want to go on that mission, but she had to.
Right.
Like she knew it was necessary.
Right. Yeah. I think we rarely want to go there unless we have to.
Easier to just keep eating the fruit. Oh, and kind of sounded like she really kind of had to like remind herself not to eat the fruit again. Like there was kind of that struggle to like stay there in the comfort of the illusion.
Yeah.
And like she really had to be mindful not to take the bite of that fruit when she offered it.
Yeah.
After talking to the old man. So.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Great reflection, brother. Yes, that's it. Because it gets so toxic just to keep doing what we do, right? Yeah. Oh, thank you, brother. Good reflections. Yeah. Cool. So I'm curious, who else has a reflection? And then we'll kind of go into some of the deeper themes or patterns in the story. Anyone else want to contribute? All right. I guess we'll kind of dive in a little bit of the story aspect of this. So yeah, so here we have is Ahimsa Manas. So Ahimsa Manas, so this is a story, like I was actually going to be sharing a whole other story with you, and I was like reading into the story, and then Spirit was like, no, there's another story to be told. And so I was like, well, what is the story? And I just wrote down a very brief description, and I sent that out. And then I went through the process of giving offerings to the story, of sitting with it, and this is the story that came out. And the story called Ahimsa Manas. Ahimsa is part of, in the yogic tradition, it's called yamas and niyamas, which are these principles of kind of giving the mind a frame of reference that allows us to enter into a state of yoga, which is a state of connection and union. And Ahimsa is the principle called nonviolence. And manos in Sanskrit means mind. So it's basically like the non-violent mind. And so she was kind of representing that aspect of our beings. And so she had this journey of coming to the temple. And there was this element of how she arrived at the temple. There was this element, she was greeting the shopkeepers, and there was a sense of kindness. And the way she interacted before she ever came to the temple, which in a lot of the Eastern traditions, the temple represents the mind. And we have all the gods live within the mind itself. And the question comes to be like, which gods are we feeding? And each of those gods have a different fruit that they want to consume. Right? And we see how when things are going well, it's easy to give of the right fruit and the pretty scented roses. But when there is that time of strife and confusion, we can often enter a time where we start to enter a different mind. And you can see how there's so many different narratives being told to us today. So many stories that are contradicting themselves about wear a mask, don't wear a mask, Corona is dangerous, it's a hoax. There's all these things going on in our environment. And here we are, we're trying to make sense of those things. And it's easy to take bite of those other fruit, right? So you could tell how, like, even with Enzamana, she didn't really bite into the fruit. She didn't enter it until she bought into it. And that could have been like when she started entering the thoughts of anxiety and those thoughts of fear, you know, those thoughts of criticism and judgment, you know, the thoughts that create the sense of them and us, right? That which creates separation. And we forget in the togetherness. And so she began to give that to the gods of the mind. And even though it doesn't taste good, we can't help but bite into those fruits. Once we enter into that dialogue, it's almost like we have to keep feeding it. There's in the yoga tradition, we call there's these 3 laws of mind. And it says that, what we focus on grows. And as we focus on that, we become that. And as we become that, so we experience. So what we focus on grows. As we focus, so we become. As we become, so we experience. So if we focus in on the things that gives us fear and uncertainty, we suddenly become the sense of fear and uncertainty, anxiety. And then we begin to experience more that we draw that in. And like a lot of those gods, they demand to be fed. So we have to keep feeding them, even though it doesn't taste so good. Right. And then there is that element of the story where there's something that creates that departure, that something wakes her up and reminds her. Right. There was that sense of that moment of joy in that child's eye. There's that sense of remembrance that occurred that allowed her to, maybe I'll walk this path this day. And she went into nature. And she did what we call sense meditation, basically. And she listened into the burbling sounds of the creek and the smells, the taste of the wild berries. And she had this experience, what we call is where instead of like learning something, she had the sense of remembering. And in the sense of remembering, she got broken open again. But that was just the beginning of the journey because she got broken open, but she had to go back. She had to return. And so she had to do that return to see for herself what gods she was actually feeding. Because she didn't believe those were the gods she was feeding. She had that doubt. Right? And so she had to still that ship, and she had to do those things she didn't think she could do. And she went across that stormy sea of the animus, which again is that internal world. It's our emotions. It's all our unprocessed thoughts, our unprocessed wounds, all those things. Just to get to that island where there's this dragon. Why would you do that? Why would you fight an ocean to go to where there's a dragon? And a lot of times we think of dragon and fire as anger. But that time of anger is often really is an expression of grief. Failed expectations, a sense of losing a sense of control. And so suddenly the anger comes out. In Ayurveda, we have a saying that like increases like. Like increases like. If you're in a heated argument and you speak some sharp words to that person, the argument's going to become more heated. In this case, she noticed that there was an element of fire in the dragon, and what they wanted to do was increase a sense of coolness. So she brought in cucumbers and mango and mint, which are cooling. So she increased those qualities. And the dragon even mentions, most people come with sharp swords. Like sharp is kind of like the fire. They bring decapitated heads. They bring their anger. And so it increases the rage of the dragon. And she's like, what's the opposite of those qualities? What will increase and decrease the qualities that create balance in us? So in Ayurveda, we say, how are you feeling right now? How do you want to feel, or what will be balanced for you specifically? And ask, what will increase those qualities? It could be food. It could be a walk in the park. It can be the kind of music you're listening to. It could be even just changing your clothes, because your clothes gives you a different sense of feeling. And we see how so much of that island that we hold deep inside of ourselves that we're afraid to cross over to, we see that it's really all this unspoken words, the unspoken energies inside our own being. And there are ways that we fear of releasing it. And then there's the creative way of moving it through us through song or dance or art or writing. There's ways of moving it through us and giving it as a holy offering rather than something to be afraid of. As Martin Pritchell has said, he's like, our grief, even our anger, they really are, they're an expression of our praise for life because they reflect what we love. So we can see how in that story, there can be that movement, which in Ahimsa, we find she received those gifts. And really the dragon was her. The ocean was her. She brought those gifts back to the people. Where the people had eaten the rotten fruit, she was now able to give of herself and give of the right fruit. And we can see how the way we can change our mind is often we change our thoughts. Like what's rotten fruit is that negativity, the criticism, the fear, the anxiety, those thoughts. That right fruit is when we look into where can we find understanding. And sometimes that understanding is like when we see other people acting out, we see they're also in a state of pain. And so we see there can be compassion. If we can search for gratitude, that releases the chains around our heart, where we move from a place of scarcity. Gratitude helps us move into the connective web where we see there is abundance. So when you can give of that, you see how that actually multiplies in yourself. The more she gave, the more she had. And in that, with the temple of the mind, she brought those fruits. Yeah. And that's about as much as I want to share with that. I don't normally like to explain my stories, but I feel with today's time, what we're all experiencing, it was good to go over these. So I want to listen into your stories and as I share these aspects and these deeper themes, what comes up for you? What is speaking to you, or how do you relate with these? Again, just go ahead and unmute yourself and begin to speak.
Well, I've been pretty upset about what's going on in Portland with the kidnappings and the violence against women and nonviolent protesters in general. And I do get so worked up about that it is kind of hard to connect. So I think that aspect of the rotten fruits, I've been kind of partaking of a lot of that lately.
Yeah.
And feeling that anger and us versus them.
Right. I've been really sitting with that these last few days too. I've been given so much rotten fruit. How do I take that fruit and make it ripe? And it's questions I don't even have the answer yet to, other than trying to fill into that there's a lot of pain. And I can relate with that pain and have compassion for it. And that's about as far as I've gotten so far. Yeah. How have you been finding ways to come into your balance or find other fruit?
Just with my daily practice, breathing, meditating, spending time in the garden.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Mark. Yeah. What comes up for others as I share those reflections or those mythic themes? Who relates with maybe the sea?
Can I speak?
Hello, Lynette.
For me, the story spoke about like the inner journey, the inner path. We are the tree of life, and the dragon is at the bottom of the tree and guards the tree and guards the fruit. So in order to go into your soul, into your unfolding of your soul, you have to go into your tree. You have, and the waters are the lower waters, and the upper waters are the waters of the wisdoms that you have to transverse in order to get to the dragon. And the dragon are the primordial wisdom keepers. And people come to them as something that they need to fight, that they need to win over. And they're wisdom keepers. You come to them with humility. And they'll provide you not only, people think that the dragons guard the gold. They don't guard the gold. What they can give you is a dragon egg. The dragon egg is the primordial wisdom. There's a lot of warriors out there right now. The world is filled with warriors. And we need more of the nurturing mother, the nurturing, caring, the love, the compassion. And, we're all broken. We're all broken. Every single one of us. If we're here, we're broken. And they say that, being broken to pieces is how you love more. It's how you give more. She was broken. She broke. That's how she went to the woods. So that's how I interpreted it. But that was me.
Oh, I love it. Yes.
Okay.
I love how you bring that into that, you don't get the gold from the dragon, you get the egg. Which means then you must nurture it, right? That means you must become a tender of that egg. Bring it to being.
Yeah, the golden egg. I mean, isn't that what we're creating? That's why we're here to recreate the golden egg. We are the golden egg.
Yeah. As I've been shared, like we each come into this world with a song, and we are that song. And we are here to tend to that song and bring it into being, because that's whatever we are, we have that unique medicine. That song has a unique medicine to bring into the world. And so it's up to us to learn it and tend to it and share it with others. Yeah. That's how I interpret that.
One other thing, when I was sitting on my balcony, it was the first time that I had the swallows. The swallows kept like flying over my head and like soaring in. And it was like, oh my God, it was actually kind of making me a little nervous. But they were like soaring over my head while you were telling the story, which was really cool for me.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Yeah, swallows. I always think of swallows as such playful yet warrior kind of energy. They have that like fire pilot, but at the same time, they look like they're so fun. Cool. Thank you, Lynette. Yeah. And another thing I wanted to bring, like when I was like feeling into the story myself, and I was like, well, who does this old man represent? Why the old man? Why not the old woman? Right? And what came through when I was feeling into that was like, well, the old man represents the sacred masculine. Right? The sacred masculine wasn't there. He wasn't there to try to tell her necessarily what to do. He wasn't trying to fix the problem, but he's like, well, this is the situation, and this is what there is to do. And the sacred masculine was there to say, well, we know you can do it, and here's the tools to do it. We're going to allow you to do it. And I see, like, as I've been a wilderness rites of passage guy working with these at-risk youth, there's so many times I want to actually rescue these kids, and just like I want to help them. They can't tie a single knot, or they're just struggling to do a simple task. But I'm like, I know I could do it so easy for them. I'm like, I have to let them do it. Here's the tools, here's the know-how, and provide them that space that they could come into their knowing. And so I thought that's what came through to me about who the old man was. And that was an interesting reflection for me as just even being a man, and how do I serve others and come into the world. Yeah. Yeah, so what else came up for you guys?
I
Well, Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Lynette. Or whoever's speaking, I'll mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. I stepped on. I guess I was feeling a little bit into what you were saying about feeling that whole masculine thing about wanting to help people into doing things, because I do that a lot at work, and I have to like train new people and stuff, and I want to like help them, but I have to hold back a lot because they need to learn and stuff. My allergies have been terrible. I tried to go to the park yesterday, and I went there, and my allergies just kept dripping and dripping. My nose just kept dripping, and I swear I had to ask a plant or two to use a leaf as a Kleenex.
Oh, great.
I couldn't really get into a sense meditation or anything because I just kept sniffling so bad.
Sounds like your nose was just giving sacred offerings to the land.
Yes.
Wow.
And I was just feeling into what you were saying about all that stuff, because I was feeling a lot of it lately about going up and down and trying to get out more and being reluctant to. That's the biggest thing. I've been really reluctant to do things. So I feel a lot like the heroine of the story. Like, I need to do these things, but I've been really reluctant to do them. So I just need to get up and just start doing them. And so, but the opportunities need to come up to do them. So I'm kind of missing that element, I feel like. It's a little bit tricky.
Wow. So it sounds like you like to have the invitation to bring.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Uh-huh.
In the same way, I'm someone who waits for an invitation, and a question I've been asking myself is, how can I create the invitation for myself to do these things I want to do or enter into a state of mind or creativity? And it's been interesting trying to create that dialogue for myself. Maybe that could be a question to explore a little bit for yourself as well. How can you create some invitations for yourself? Yeah. I mean, like, I try to create the invitation for doing my sit spot in the morning, because sometimes I'm also reluctant to it. And so I've been like, oh, well, I'm going to create the invitation because I'm going to create, like, I want to understand a certain plant, or I want to have a certain feeling. Like, I think that's probably the main thing, is like, I want to have a certain feeling I want to move into. And so I realize if I go there, that's going to help me with that invitation of going into that feeling. So it's something to explore.
Yeah. Like, it does feel like I need an invitation into doing something, because it's like I'm waiting for that kind of, I ask and then I'm waiting for the response.
Yeah.
It's just like when I was waiting for the plant to say, okay, you can have my leaf to blow your nose.
Awesome. You're on a good journey, Heather. Thank you. Yeah. Nate, brother.
I was listening to Lynette speak about the dragons and the wisdom keeper, and just swimming in the awesome Nordic vision of that, with the Yggdrasil and the Jormungandr, I loved it. And then she was speaking about, we're all broken.
Yeah.
the flame of the candle right behind, you know, that I light when I didn't bring my incense today. I was late because we're working on the house, but flame was the offering, and so there's a candle. And when she said, "And we're all broken, and that's what we have to give, and we have more to give when we're broken," the flame on the candle went out, and then came back.
Wow.
Yeah. So I have to sit with that. That's my homework this week.
Yes.
Because we are all broken, especially right now. We have so much more to give.
Right?
And then how grateful I am for that realization. And if I eat that instead of seeing, God, I'm so sick that we're all broken. I'm so tired of this fucking mess. You know, if I eat with gratitude, and I eat the gratitude of how much can we give now that we're all in the same soup broken, and all these layers are being broken open. You know, everything from systemic racism all the way to classism, all the way to the bones of imperial colonialist, mad, nonstop consumerists. You know, the dragon is the wisdom keeper, of course. And, you know, when I was a young person listening to these stories, I would always say to myself, well, why does the dragon need someone to go across the ocean to bring them some fruit? Why isn't the dragon doing his job? You know, that was a side of me that wasn't going in secret into the woods and offering in secret.
Oh.
And when I learned to do, you know, go down the, as Lynette said, the inner world tree yourself, and go to the wisdom keepers, what I learned was, well, these old land spirits, you know, the dragon is this old land spirit in the story who has a job to do, because the dragon's the one's going to sing directly to the moon goddess.
Oh.
So she could have sung to the moon goddess, but Ahimsa wasn't, what do we say? We say that her role in circle wasn't that role. Her role in circle was to bring back to the village the fruit that would wake everyone up and help them remember. This invitation to remember.
Yeah.
And so the wild beings, you know, the lake dragons and the griffins and all, you know, the troll people out in the woods where I live, we have this fascination about them that has zero to do with their reality, because there's no invitation there. It's a consumption of a glamour. It's a consumption of an illusion, and it doesn't invite them to have a place in the circle where they're of service, when the reality is they've been doing their service for a lot longer than we have.
Oh.
So the dragon's been singing the song to the goddess for a long time, but part of the dragon's service is to not only sing to the moon goddess, it is to get to the point where it needs someone to bring fruit to clear the throat chakra, so that the human can know, oh, well, if I bring something over to that hill over there where all this blackberries are overgrown and all this stuff, and I'm just getting pulled over there, and if I go over there and I do this little thing, there's going to be a ricochet. Something's going to happen, and something else is going to happen, and something else is going to happen. And these forces, whatever, you know, we call them wisdom keepers or dragons or whatever our own language is, but they want relationship with us in the land, because there is an invitation they need from us to come into our circle, which is also their circle.
Yeah.
So we're being invited to go be of service to them and to clean up the rivers and to clean up the trash and whatever. But that is also an invitation for them to come into our dreams and into our careers and into our mundane, and make the candle go out and then come back on again.
That's it, brother.
You know, so thanks to Lynette for reminding me this week. I need to eat the gratitude and be in gratitude for the fact that we are all being broken right now, from the most powerful to the least seemingly powerful, because that's the place where we can really enact the most change. If not only the most broken ones are doing the change, but if everyone gets to be most broken, we can all do the kind of change that might help reverse this course.
Yes. Oh, that's it, brother. Yeah. I think that's a really important aspect, is recognizing that we are all broken. And we're finally being forced into that fact where I think in other storytellings, I've called it the sattva syndrome, where we get attached to this idea we're meant to be in balance, everything's supposed to be in flow. You know, we're not supposed to struggle, we're not supposed to have this emotional content. And so we try to portray this old kind of mentality. You know, everything's just going. But what that has is created all this repressed energy, which is really like that dragon, right? It's like just building it up. And finally, we're forced into direct contact with that. And like as a society, we're finally at that place where we can no longer deny that trembling emotion and thoughts and feelings inside of us. It has to be broken open. And as Lynette said, that's where our gifts truly come in. That's, to be broken open is to reach the inner textures of our own being, our gifts. There's the old sayings like we're all born with this rich inheritance, but no one's ever claiming the inheritance because they're just staying on the outside of our being. Saying what's really saying it's just what's on the periphery of our being, just of our awareness, is what's trying to probe us into the deeper awareness of who we are. Yeah. So many layers there, brother. I love it. Right. I'm just curious, who else would like to speak into what we're speaking into here? What imagery is coming up for you? Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, we have the story time the first and third Sunday of each month. Yeah. Great. Oops. Let's see here. There's a lot of layers in the story. And one of the things I often want to remind everyone in this is that, you know, we talk about like what are the fruits that we are bringing into the temple, right? Our mind. Oh, that's cool. That's the temple right there. The mind. It's fun. And at the same time, you know, it's important to remember that though we want to be aware of what we're feeding the mind, what fruits are we taking of, it's important to recognize that every emotion and every thought that comes up is valid and is holy. I think sometimes we get attached to like, oh, now I only need to be thinking gratitude and understanding and love. You know, it's representing that sometimes our fear is also an expression of what we love. It's an expression of what we value. And it's sometimes those dark emotions, which are the doorways that gives us entrance into the deeper understandings of our being. And the thing to remember is, with that, you go into those doorways, but be there with also the right mind. We don't have to collapse into anxiety and fear. We can be into the thoughts, well, this is creating anxiety, this is creating fear, and acknowledge it. But then the question is, are you going to feed it? It's like, how do we also come back into our center, which is a personal answer. And from my personal experience and from guiding others over the 16 years, the more you go into nature and you're surrounded by the stillness and the silence of the land, you can bathe your senses into those sounds and those senses, the smells. You have the space of returning back into your center. You remember who you are. You remember your gifts. You remember your truth. Because right now you can see in the collective, there's a lot of stories being told, and it's easy to collapse into them. And I think for me personally, what I find most disconcerting or disturbing is that the information being presented to us is people who have enrolled into the exact opposite story are using the same information to reinforce their story. Like, I've been very deliberate to ensure that in my circle, I have people from every perspective. I have people who really love Trump, people who hate Trump, people who are very strong Christian, those who are very anti-Christian, those who are of all these different textual layers of different politics. And so I always go in and ask, well, why is it that they feel so strongly about why they feel that way? And I find that those who are using certain information to reinforce their stance, the entirely opposite spectrum is using the exact same information to reinforce that stance. We have people who thinks a lot of this is the work of people trying to bring us back to a communist or Marxist kind of state, and others who are saying this is a fascist movement, and they're using the same information. So it's very disconcerting. And so to be able to come back into nature and just to remember your truth and what is the stories we ascribing to, where are we coming into our mind, what are we feeding, I think it's really important during these times. Especially important when we look back to Buddha and we look back to the stories of Jesus and Ramana and Krishna and all the other, avatars. They all communicated these times of having to go off into nature and be in balance, to reconnect. And if there's these avatars who had to do this, you can think as us who are just these mere mortals, we definitely need to do it on a regular basis. Whether that's just showing up at your altar or your meditation mat or going out on your back porch and listening into what birds you can hear, what insects are beneath your mat. Yeah. That's all I have to offer with that. Oh, yeah. Cool. So with that, I'm just curious if anyone has any last reflections regarding today's story time. Or any other thoughts you would love to contribute into the circle.
I'm just grateful for the story. Thank you, Chivito. That was the perfect story for today. And I appreciate your heart.
Thank you, brother.
As the storyteller, because there's a way to sit with that kind of power. And when you do that, it helps us, and it serves the village, it serves the circle, and I appreciate that deeply. Thank you. I'm grateful.
Thank you, brother. We appreciate your reflections, man. Yeah. Yeah, I'm very grateful that the stories can speak through us. That's for sure. Cool. So with that, I guess we'll bring this storytelling event to a close. And if you guys have further reflections you would love to share with me, feel free to email me at learning@treeoftotems.com. And I'm here to be of service. So if whatever might be, I'm an open book and happy to share. We are also still offering our free pandemic mentoring. So if you are struggling during these times, need a little more insight, just go to our website at treeoftotems.com. This is just here tending to the fire of our community. So that's still there available for people. Great. So with that, everyone, have a wonderful night. And thank you for spending this evening.
Thank you, Chavito. Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, brother.